Hey everybody, my name is Dan Liberto and I teach people how to cultivate peace and happiness in practical ways by integrating mind, body, and spirit. Today I want to talk about conditioning. I want to go into conditioning and 3 ways to wake up from conditioning. Okay, so first I'm going to start out with what conditioning is, the sources of how we receive conditioning, how to become aware of that conditioning, a few practices, and also the solutions to conditioning. Okay, so what is conditioning? Conditioning is the thoughts, behaviors, and ideas that were implemented into us between the ages 1 to 5. Growing up as kids, we're very impressionable to, different ideas and thoughts and practices and behaviors. And a lot of the times we're not even aware of the conditioning that we've been kind of consuming throughout those ages, throughout those times in our life. Okay? So a lot of these conditionings, they control our life and we're not aware of it until we wake up, until we are able to realize that these behaviors and thoughts are not our own and that they were passed down to us from other sources. Okay, so what are some of these sources? The biggest one is the people who are closest to us as we were growing up. So that would be our parents, number one, or maybe if you had, if you grew up with your grandparents or something like that, it would be your grandparents. Another big one would be anybody who was close to you growing up. So this may be uncles, aunts, brothers, sisters, teachers, different things like that. Now, I want to point out that conditioning doesn't stop when you hit age 5. This is just when we're most impressionable and when we really develop our sense of who we are and our habits and our behaviors and the way we relate to life, the way we think about life, the way we're supposed to respond to events, external events that are happening in our life. Okay, so I kind of went over some of the sources, and now I want to get into how to become aware of conditioning, and how this is affecting us. So I want you to think of different behaviors and paradigms that you exhibit. Okay, and they could be good or they could be bad. We don't just want to focus on bad conditioning, because there is some conditioning that has helped us throughout our life that we inherited from our parents' view of the world or understanding of how to respond to things or behaviors in certain instances. So I want you to think of a certain behavior or way of thinking, paradigm, repetitive way of thinking that you have, and think about who in your early life exhibits those same behaviors or ways of responding. Okay, so bring something up, maybe a certain type of response that you have to a certain event, or a certain way of being. Bring that up and then figure out who close to you exhibits those same exact ways of reacting or behaving in this instance. Okay, and if you can't come up with anything right now, being present in meditation and meditating on this will help you identify these conditionings and who in your life has been an influence in creating these types of conditionings within who you are. Okay, so moving on from that, the next thing we're going to do is a practice. And I want you to think of one good conditioning that you received from whoever it was that you grew up with and who was closest to you. For example, mine was my parents, and excuse me, and one good conditioning trait that they had was to always work hard. that, hard work was or is a critical step to success and to achieving your goals and to, being quote unquote successful in life. So one thing that I picked up from an early age was to work hard and to never give up and to continue doing what it is I want to do until I achieve that specific goal. Okay, so that would be one example of conditioning that has benefited me throughout my life, and I still hold on to that conditioning because I feel that it serves me. Okay, so go ahead and think of one thing that your parents do that has helped you in your life. Maybe something like working hard, might be something like, caring about others, or, a certain practice. Maybe it's fitness, going to the gym or eating a healthy diet. Whatever it is that has helped you throughout your life, at the same time, know that you didn't come out of the womb with this idea. It was conditioned into you. So this is the aspect of conditioning that we're looking at. We're looking at the fact that you weren't born thinking that this was the way to behave, right? Okay, so after you've done that, now let's come into something that you've been conditioned with that has had more of a negative impact on your life. Something that has caused you some sense of suffering. And wake up to the fact that this conditioning has been applied to you, probably unconsciously, from your parents, and so on and so forth. And we'll make the conscious decision to let go of that conditioning. Okay, so for me, when I think of an example, I think of there's a member in my family who responds quite frantically to everything. I feel not really present in the moment, always trying to get somewhere else, always trying to accomplish something else, kind of checking things off the list as the day goes on, and really develops the sense in this conditioning that I inherited. It develops a sense that there's really not enough time, that time is running out, and that things need to get accomplished. Otherwise, success won't happen, or I won't achieve what it is I need to achieve and ultimately fail. Okay? And I see these patterns. I still see these patterns in that family member, and I see it in myself. But the difference is that I have become aware that this is a conditioned input from that family member, and as a result, I can go ahead and mindfully say, wait a second, I have the patience, I cultivate patience, and I have more than enough time. This life is really just a tiny little smidge in the whole picture of my soul. And there's really nothing that I actually even need to do. Just being alive is enough. Just being here, being present, and being in the moment is enough. Everything else outside of that is really outside influences, conditioning, telling us we need to do X, Y, or Z to be okay. And now that I'm aware that there is nothing else that I need to do or accomplish, I can have peace in that moment. I can have peace, and I can create, and I can be more present with who I am in this moment and be okay as the day unfolds. Okay? So I want you guys to think about a negative conditioning that you have received from someone close to you growing up, think about what that behavior is, what those thoughts are like, how it causes you suffering. And I want you to realize that this is just basically a input that has been conditioned into you, a certain way of thinking that isn't the truth. It's just their way of being, their way of responding that you have picked up. And I want you to consciously, once you become aware, let that go. I want you to let that go and monitor your mind. And when you see that conditioned behavior come up, tag it as conditioning, and then choose to let it go. And know that it is not an optimal way of being. It's a unique way of being that's causing you suffering or some type of pain. Okay? And so what we basically want to do is realize those thoughts that come, or those actions or those ways of being that come from the heart, realize those and start to cultivate those more. And also realize those thoughts that come from the conditioning, from the ego, from the mind, realize those as well, and start to decondition the ego, start to decondition the inner child, start to decondition the conditioning we received growing up that doesn't serve us anymore, and start to come from a place of truth, a place of presence, and from the heart. Okay? And so basically, this isn't to say, that to be mad at the conditioning that you received growing up. Because we equally have received good conditioning along with bad conditioning. And, good and bad is even that concept. I mean, there's really no good and bad, but it's what causes our being to either advance or to retract. Okay, that's how we'll define good or bad. And so we've received these good and bad aspects of conditioning from our upbringing. And what we want to do is not get mad over it, but have gratitude for the good conditioning, and then become aware, wake up to the negative conditioning, let that go, and focus on the intention of the conditioning that we received. Because the intention is everything. And if the intention of the conditioning was good, ultimately, and it probably was, to help that person, they think that they need to act in a certain way, or think in a certain way, or behave in a certain way, to make them, get better. And so the intention was to get better, but it's not causing them to get better, or you to get better, it's causing distress. So that's why, conditioning isn't a lot of the times a conscious thing. It's a subconscious behavior. And finally, what you want to do is you really want to start to consume positive and helpful content to recondition your mind and understand your mind and understand yourself, to become a better, more loving, more happy, more peaceful, more holistic individual. Okay, so one of the key steps to doing that is to waking up to your conditioning. And after you wake up to your conditioning, realize it, let it go, and begin to reprogram that conditioning that you have. And at the same time, once that starts to happen, you begin to realize that a lot of your behaviors from early childhood are no longer serving you, and you can let them go, and you can work on that over and over again until you recondition your mind to be, in your heart to be more present, and thus become happier and more peaceful. Okay? So I'm going to start life coaching here real soon on helping people just like you to cultivate happiness and peace in your life. And I will share that webpage with you guys once it is up. You can book a session with me, and we can help delve into what your goals are and what may be holding you back, and help you and your soul transform into a higher state of being, into a higher state of understanding, into a higher state of existence, so that you can be the person you have always set out to be. Much love, and we'll talk to you next time.